Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the UPMC Rooney Sports Complex on the south side of Pittsburgh. It is week 14 of the NFL season. Bob Pompiani here. Missy Matthews will join me shortly, and this is a big week. We're getting down to crunch time. Both teams, the Ravens and Steelers, come into this big game this weekend, 6 wins, 6 losses. Both are coming off losses. The Steelers, of course, to Buffalo in the second half that went totally wrong. 26-7, they lose that game. On the other hand, it is the Bengals who went down to Baltimore on Thanksgiving and handed them a 32-14 loss. So there's a lot on the line in this game. We'll find out what happens with injuries and stuff from last week, and we'll talk about certainly what happens in Baltimore coming up. And to do that, Mike Tomlin is ready to meet with the media.
Good afternoon. As always, man, I'll start with a quick assessment of the last performance. And unfortunately, the tape didn't show anything dramatically different than what we saw in stadium. We played 30 minutes of acceptable football, and then, we didn't do what we needed to do in the third quarter and in any of the phases of play. And certainly that put us behind the gun, and we were running uphill from there. I think frustration became a component of it, which is a natural thing. We got a lot of guys that work extremely hard and put a lot into prep, and we want to win. We want to do what's required to win, but we didn't necessarily express that want to appropriately. And so we kind of talked about that some yesterday as a collective. I own the responsibility of making sure that these guys understand a component of being a tough team to beat is not beating ourselves. We had some penalties, and certainly you're going to have penalties when you play. But penalties of the 15-yard variety, loss of composure and things of that nature hadn't been us. And so that needs to be corrected immediately. We talked about that. And when it's from some of our guys like captains and so forth, guys that represent us at the coin toss, it certainly merits discussion and analysis. And so we went through that, and we look forward to moving on from that. Now, a component of moving on from that is executing better. When you execute better, you make more plays, frustration becomes less of an issue. And so certainly, first and foremost, as we lean in on this week, man, our focus is performing at a higher level, doing a better job strategically, doing a better job of dividing the labor up, and then ultimately letting that lead to doing a better job of play. Really, there's a rhythm to it in recent weeks, particularly in Chicago and last week, and but it doesn't make it any easier, obviously, to identify and move on from. Certainly, when you have the lead at halftime and you're getting the ball to come out to start the second half, there's generally a good feel there. But we haven't done enough with the football to start second halves, and certainly we haven't done enough to defend the grass once we've turned the ball over. And so that could be descriptive of how things unfolded in Chicago, and it certainly is a description of how things unfolded last week. And so, we talk about it, we learn from it, but equally as important, we roll our sleeves up and go to work. How do you get that synergy? How do you get the confidence? How do you get the cohesion required to win? You tighten up your plan. You delve into things that you've spent more time in than things that you hadn't. You make sure that guys are in position to work in a coordinated fashion in all three phases. And so we're making some very, pointed decisions as we lay the foundation for this plan this week. But I imagine Baltimore is doing similar things. We both sit at 6-6. Both of those positions come with some scars, certainly, but they need to come with some lessons learned as well. And I think the team that displays the ability to apply those lessons best is going to be the team that's going to be in position to control this game and thus be in control of the North. And before I get specifically into Baltimore and talking about their personnel and so forth, just let me say this, man. I really enjoy the structure that is today's NFL scheduling. The excitement associated around these division games, the weight on them, not only for us in Baltimore, but just globally speaking. We felt it a year ago. We had some big games against them in the latter part of the year as well. I think it's good for football. It's good for our fan base. It's good for their fan base. It's an honor to be a part of it. And certainly it provides an edge for us, man, an urgency for us as we prepare. We've been in hotly contested battles with this group in the past. and I see no reason why this weekend won't be the same. There's certainly a lot at stake. From an injury perspective, I'll cover a few things. Derek Harmon can be characterized as out again this week with his knee injury. Everyone else could be characterized as questionable, and when I characterize people as questionable, oftentimes it means limited participation at the early part of the week, and then increased participation as the week goes on, and the quality and quantity of that participation being our guide toward availability. The guys that fall into that category, Patrick Queen with his glute injury, and some other guys with some bumps and bruises associated with play. James Pierre is in the concussion protocol, and I never really try to provide too much color regarding that. The medical experts make that determination, but he's in the protocol and could be listed as questionable as we sit here today. And I'd imagine we got some other guys that lack availability associated with bumps and bruises, associated with play this time of year that could be limited at the top part of the week. But we expect those guys to pick up as the week goes on. And you can characterize Aaron Rodgers within that group as well. Now on to Baltimore. As I mentioned earlier, they're familiar with us. We're familiar with them. It creates excitement. It creates excitement around the strategic planning. It's fun to have knowledge of this group, but watch how they've evolved over the course of the journey. And we all evolve for a variety of reasons. The elevation of individual players, the emergence of individual players, the attrition component of the game as you miss people and adapt schematically, and from a divisional labor standpoint to make up for that, the return of players and that impact that it has. For instance, on offense, I'll start with Baltimore's offense. At the early portions of the year, they were without Richard and Likely, two major components, if you're familiar with Baltimore, that play major roles in how they function. Likely is an awesome second tight end to partner with Andrews. They play a lot out of two tight end personnel groups, and they're able to get a lot done in the running game and in the passing game. And I think you feel with each passing week the impact of his return and presence, and certainly the same thing with Richard, man. We've dealt with him over the years, man. You get that guy on the field in front of Derrick Henry, man, you got an all-day job ahead of you in terms of minimizing what they're capable of in the running game. And certainly, as we lean in on this week, that's where our attentions lie from a defensive perspective. No disrespect to their passing game, and certainly they got a lot of capable guys there. But we're talking about a legendary runner of this generation in Derrick Henry. We're talking about some schematics and some personnel that really highlight that agenda, coupled with our present state coming off the type of performance that we just came off of regarding the run. I believe that focus is justified and appropriate. But they do have some dangerous people on the perimeter. I like their divisional labor from a receiver standpoint. Zay Flowers obviously is a dangerous receiver. He's good after the catch. He's got make you miss. He's elusive. Bateman and D are veteran guys that know what it is that they're doing. D-Hop, you can't say enough about him in terms of some 50-50 ball matchups and the things that he provides them from a one-on-one perspective. As I mentioned, the tight ends when I was talking about the running game, Mark Andrews, man, him and Lamar have been, partners in this thing since they got drafted in the same draft class. I think he's Baltimore's all-time leading receiving touchdown guy. He's certainly still a major component of what they do in the red area. I think he's got 5 or so touchdowns this year. But the ball goes to and through Lamar. His ability to extend and make plays, his ability to run, particularly in situational moments, is and always has been a challenge. We failed some at that challenge a week ago against Josh Allen, and so for those reasons, man, we're really working with an edge in preparation for this one. Certainly, we have a lot of experience in defending them and going against them, but I'm sure they say similar things regarding us, and so with that understanding, we proceed. On the defensive side of the ball, they really did some things to stabilize themselves kind of at the trade deadline. A couple quality acquisitions, one at the safety spot and one at the edge spot to round out some areas where they were really thin. The safety acquisition has really allowed Kyle Hamilton to do what Kyle Hamilton does, which is to play big nickel on first and second down and play around the line of scrimmage and blitz and defend the run and set edges. You get in sub-package situations and more passing circumstances on third down. He essentially plays a dime linebacker spot, and you have to deal with he and Roquan, and they're both formidable, certainly. They're very good underneath defenders and blitzers, and they've got really good schematics that highlight those talents. Another versatile guy, obviously worth mentioning, is Marlon Humphreys, man. He plays outside when Kyle Hamilton plays nickel. When Kyle Hamilton moves to dime linebacker, he plays inside. He's a very versatile guy, man. He's the poster boy for their turnover culture. I think he's got 17 career forced fumbles and counting now. And so ball security is going to be a major component of it. We got to be really fundamentally sound there. Again, he leads that charge. But again, wouldn't be remiss if I didn't mention Malachi Starks, man, their first rounder. He's a center fielder, man, and is doing a really good job patrolling that area of the field, and particularly of late, as I mentioned, with that acquisition, and they're able to solidify some divisional labor. He's been a mainstay in the middle of the field for him and doing a nice job of solidifying that space. You see growth and development in Nate Wiggins in year 2. I think he's playing really good football. He's a tough cover man. I know he went out of the last football game, but as we sit here and prepare today, we certainly anticipate seeing him in a matchup like this and ready to deal with his talents. They do a lot of things up front, man. They use a variety of packages and personnel groups. They've had some attrition up front in their defensive line and edge people, and so they get into some dime 41. They also get into some dime 32. Young draftee out of Clemson, Simpson, is versatile. You'll see him in some dime 32. He'll rush off the edge. He'll act as a hover rusher at times in a hybrid four-man rush. He drops some. It gives him really good schematic variation. You got he and Roquan and Kyle Hamilton down around the box. Some guys blitz, some guys cover. They do a nice job week in and week out of kind of changing those things up. And then certainly when we play these guys, man, special teams is always a major component of how games unfold. They're a really good special teams unit. It's a value system of theirs. Certainly it's a value system of ours. We'll be fighting for every blade of grass in all 3 phases, and oftentimes they come in more chunks in this phase because of the vertical and horizontal grass associated with these plays. And so, man, we got to be really good in that space. Our return games got to provide a leg up for us. Our coverage game has got to be excellent, and certainly our specialists have to be on it. Excited about the prep in terms of what lies ahead with us this week. Excited about getting in front of our guys, starting tomorrow morning, man, and laying out a plan and working that plan and taking it to Baltimore, AFC North football with a division lead online. I'll pause and open it up for questions.
Mike, when you talk about the frustration, where do you see it manifested? In their play, in their body language, in their behavior, what?
In a little bit of both, really, in all areas, and certainly, I never want people to apologize for caring. And I view the frustration displayed last week in that way. Guys were in fight mode. They care. The game wasn't unfolding the way that we desire. They didn't necessarily express it appropriately. And so as a leader, it's about redirecting that and making sure it's channeled in the right ways. But also, how do we move on from that? The source of that frustration is not playing the way that we would like to play. And so certainly putting together a good plan and putting them in position to play well is a component of moving on from it.
Mike, what did you learn from the captains in talking to them and what they feel like needs to change?
We have a lot of discussions week in and week out. I generally leave those discussions between us. But certainly I'm open to insight from those guys and assistance from those guys. A lot of those guys been around a lot of football, and when you're in the position that I'm in, you don't care where good advice comes from, you don't care where good ideas come from. That's just the spirit in which I move and have moved for a very long time. I think the longer you're in this business, you understand that. Forget authorship or ownership. It's about being right and being ready. And so, man, certainly those opinions are valued.
You said after the game on Sunday that the answers were in the building, but a lot of the issues that you guys had on Sunday have been the issues all season. Why have the answers to those issues been so elusive?
Because those same ingredients have produced 6 wins as well as 6 losses. And so, it's about how we cook it this week.
Like one of the things that Aaron mentioned after the game was that he felt like practice wasn't good last week, and that's kind of been a common theme. Is there something that needs to change with practice, or is that feedback that he's given you that you can take into account?
I'm open to doing whatever it is that we need to do, obviously in the effort to make practice better. Sometimes practice gets challenging, particularly at the early portions of the week this time of year, because of lack of significant player availability, and certainly felt that last week, not making that as an excuse. That's just the reality of our business. I'm sure people that we compete against miss significant players as well. How we navigate that oftentimes during the week is, an example of how we might navigate it during the course of the weekend. And certainly last week, based on the results, were not good enough. And particularly from a defensive perspective, when we lost Patrick Queen, we didn't do a good enough job of managing that component of it.
Also mentioned that he thought maybe the cold weather was impacting the quality of practice. Do you consider moving more practices inside?
We generally play outside, and so if the surface is safe, I like to practice in the environment that we play in. But if you lose productivity because of the windage, et cetera, those are just general decisions that you make that's best appropriate for the group. In spirit, you like the group to practice in the environment that they play in, but if it's counterproductive, if it's survival, then certainly you make adaptation.
When you guys have the run fit problems that you guys had Sunday, and you're going up against another big run opponent, where's the line between focusing on the minutia and the smaller details versus maybe looking at a more global approach from a coaching standpoint, how to fix those problems?
I think you approach it from both perspectives. I think you got to put a lot of lines in the water. Certainly, we're looking at strategic global things from a strategy or schematic standpoint, but we're also looking at the division of labor and the positions that we put players in, how we adjust and adapt and communicate, particularly when that gets strained due to player availability or lack thereof. And so some of those things and all of those things are a component of the decision-making process.
Department's health in that regard.
TJ Watt was pretty frustrated that they seemed to run the same play or similar concept over and over with success. Where were the shortcomings in that particular play or that situation?
It was really good execution by them. Oftentimes it was a final look, but there were pre-snap movement and changes of offensive personnel that disguised it. And so sometimes a play would hit in a particular space, but they would change offensive personnel, requiring us to change defensive personnel, and the person might be different the second time. And so that's just a strategic component of football. Man, they did an awesome job. I don't want to take anything away from them, and we certainly have to be better.
Aside from Harmon's health, which has been a variable, and you mentioned you're open it will be again this week with his injury, why have you found that the run game has been at times very good on defense against like Chicago and Jonathan Taylor, and why has it struggled as mightily as it has in other weeks?
I think, you'd have to look at each one of those things individually, the plans, the players available to us, the schematics of those that we compete against. I think that's the challenge and the beautiful thing about this league is that week in and week out, man, you start anew. There's certainly, particularly at this point of the year, some evidence of who you are and evidence of who your opponents are. But from a strategy standpoint, you better start at ground zero. You better build, and that's what we're in the process of doing today and this week in an effort to put out a better performance this week.
You talked about trying to learn some things Alpha last week with the way Allen ran as opposed to getting Lamar this week. Is there a transferable thing there in the way they approach it with those two quarterbacks? Or is
it certainly is, but they're certainly very different guys. They both have designed quarterback runs as a component of their attack. Lamar is more on the perimeter because of his talents, his elusiveness, his speed. Josh Allen is more downhill because of his talents. He's big, he's strong, he's competitive and combative. But either way you slice it, it's 11-on-11 football. Certainly, they have different approaches to that 11-on-11 football. The differences in the backs have a lot to do with it. Cook is elusive and perimeter capable and things of that nature. And certainly, although Derek has great speed and when he gets into the secondary, he's a problem. You really want to work hard to minimize his downhill because, man, when he gets downhill on you, you really feel it that's when he starts bumper carring and bouncing off of people, and you want to eliminate that component of his game. And so there certainly are some similarities, but there certainly are some dramatic differences as well. We'll lean on the similarities. We have experience competing against Baltimore, and so we certainly understand the differences.
Mike, the way Baltimore ran against you last year in December, did you learn anything what not to do to try to defend that?
Certainly.
Such as?
Just how you play apex players, the guys that are halfway between the core of the defense and the perimeter, some of the things you do around secondary rotation and so forth. I think anytime you play, there's an educational process. I think one of the first things that we do on Monday morning or Sunday night, most of the time for me is Sunday, is jot down some just quick initial notes while it's fresh to capture that learning, the adaptation that happens in game, the adjustments, the conversations had formally and informally. I think it's just good business and protocol to formally document that, to collect it and store it, because certainly if you've been in this business any length of time, you double back to it sooner, probably more so than later.
When you're having trouble generating offense, why does it make sense to have Pat Freiermuth on the bench?
We got a bunch of guys that are capable. I think we've been through some of these discussions before. We got a lot of capable guys that we have a lot of confidence in. Pat is certainly one of them. Ball didn't bounce his way a week ago, but certainly he's a viable option for us and one that's strongly considered as we work this week.
Mike, you talk a lot about frustration, and you have said you understand the fans' frustration. What is it like for you personally when they're calling for you to go?
In general, I agree with them. From this perspective, football is our game. We're in the sport entertainment business. And so if you root for the Steelers, entertaining them is winning. And so when you're not winning, it's not entertaining. And if you've been in this business, you understand that. And so I respect it. I share frustrations. I understand what makes this thing go, and winning is what makes this thing go.
Mike, will you make any adjustments to the responsibilities of your coaching staff?
Not anything that merits discussion in this setting, no.
Mike, during the draft and free agency, you talked about wanting to be more physical across the board. How do you feel like your team is kind of fulfilling or not fulfilling that goal?
As we stand here today, based on the last performance, not so good. But certainly at different times in this journey, I felt really good about it. And so I think that could describe a lot of the conversations, as I mentioned earlier, when you're sitting at 6-6. For us, it's about absorbing that and understanding that and plotting a course to move forward, but also understanding that the things that happen to us are not vacuum related. It's happening to those that we compete against as well. I'd imagine Baltimore's got similar challenges and issues because they sit at 6-6 as well. And so the team that can manage those things and summons up the good in a more really consistent way is a team that's going to have a chance to control this game this weekend.
Two things about Aaron. Just first of all, simply, how did his wrist come out of that game? How did he respond to playing a full game? And then secondly, did you see anything during the game that was cause for alarm that you need to see get better in practice in terms of the ball handling duties, things like that, before you feel better about what you can do offensively this week?
I feel good about what we can do offensively. I don't think that we're limited in any way. Certainly we're going to do some things a little bit different to accommodate present circumstances. Like we worked almost exclusively out of gun or pistol a week ago to minimize some of that. It'll probably be less of a discussion this week. We'll see as the week wears on. And certainly I think he came out of the game, at least physically, from a wrist injury perspective, in a good place.
Coach, you mentioned frustrations. I want to talk about the players' perspective. Would you prefer them flush those frustrations and that kind of passion here and get back to practice and just move on, or carry that and use that as a tool throughout the week?
Both.
Mike, where do you hang your hat as a coach when you look at the problems in the run offense game? You guys couldn't get that going against a Bills team that largely struggled against the run.
We got to roll our sleeves up and go back to work, man. Our process for us is a thing for me. Oftentimes I get asked, I think, Brooke, you always ask, what gives you confidence? And sometimes I answer it in a colorful way, but it's what we do. It's no different than what you guys do. You guys might write a bad article or a couple of bad articles? Does it lessen your confidence in your ability to write articles the next time? I imagine it doesn't, because you've been doing it all your adult lives. And it's the same for us as individuals or a collective in this business. Certainly our last performance wasn't up to snuff, but I don't know that it lessens our belief in self or our ability to deliver individually and collectively moving forward.
At the same time, though, does it force you to reevaluate the way you go about your job? And you
Does it make you when you write a bad article?
I got more confidence than you, which is
Certainly it does, because if you got a desire to be great, you better analyze things in a really critical way. You know what I mean? And I think that's what you're asking. And certainly, if winning is our agenda, and it is, we're not going to be hypersensitive to that.
But when you have a stretch where you guys have not played really consistent football for going on 2 months, do you accentuate the bad, or do you say, when I asked you earlier about sort of where you're at, you said, well, these answers also produced 6 wins. So do you have to remind these guys, hey, we played good football?
I think it depends on the situation, what topic is being discussed, and who you're dealing with. I think at times you utilize both.
So how do you channel that confidence, Mike? Is it more about we are confident that we can come up with different ways to, as you often say, skin the cat, or is it more about confidence that we just need to do what we do better?
It's both. It's both. I think that, I think if you're in one lane exclusively, you're not providing enough irons in the fire to produce victory.
How much have you changed your approach during the season this year?
As compared to what?
As compared to what you normally do. When you say, when we write bad articles, what do we do? Well, sometimes I, transcribe differently.
I think the tools that available oftentimes dictate the change. And so certainly this week's plan is going to be different than last week's plan. The opponent is different. The players available to us, anticipated available to us, may be different. And so that's what I mean when I ask, how do you change? Because you change because of necessity. You change because of the challenges are different week in and week out. The materials available to you, whether it's manpower or what have you, change based on player availability and so forth. Conditions change. The environmental component of the game changes. Certainly we're going to be in Baltimore, Maryland, and so that creates a hostile environment on possession downs for our offense, for example. And so you change out of necessity. You're not resistant to change, and I don't know that you spend a lot of time quantifying the amount of that change. You just know that change is required.
Mike, do you have an identity as a team yet?
Yeah, 6-6, and I don't like it.
Mike, you talk openly about building your team in the offseason to deal with the AFC North a lot of times. How did what happened at the end of last season in Baltimore impact the way you went about constructing this team this year?
The acquisition of bigs. You saw our emphasis in the draft around big people, fortifying our depth in that area, and certainly it's been required. We've certainly had some attrition in that area. Dean Lowry, Loudermilk, and Derek Harmon has missed a couple of stretches, and so that depth with young people like YA and O and others, man, is significant. You can't run out of bigs. If you run out of bigs in AFC North ball, you're running on the beach, certainly.
Mike, going back to identity, what have you identified on offense and defense as things that you guys do well that you can rely on when things are going off the rails?
I'm sorry?
What have you identified on offense that you, as a team, do well that you can fall back on, that you can rely on?
We're very good at third and manageable. I think we might be tops in the league at 3rd and 3 or less. I don't check some of those statistics. I generally focus on the things that we need to improve upon. But we've been really good at 3rd and manageable, and so if we work to stay in those down in distances, we give ourselves a chance to possess the ball more than we have, as an example. Defensively, we certainly have done a nice job in general at taking the ball away. Culturally, we know what a big component of the game that is, and so what can we do to fortify that component of our game again this week to make sure it's an aspect of our portfolio as we work to engineer victory, just to name a few. But again, when you're trying to be great, when you're trying to win games this week, you better be focused on things that you need to fix first and foremost, and not seeking comfort relative to the things that you do well or you've done well.
Slay was a healthy scratch on Sunday. Does he have an opportunity to earn his way back on the field, or what went into that decision?
Really it was less about Slay, and it was more about getting an opportunity to see Asante Samuels He's a global NFL starter type who's been on our practice squad. This time of year is attrition sets in. You step into stadiums week in and week out. Things happen, and we certainly wanted to have an opportunity to see him in stadium before we maybe had to make a decision on him, before someone else forced our hand regarding decisions. And so it was about that for us. Slay has missed some time due to a variety of injuries and so forth, and it was about getting a look at that guy that started a lot of games in this league, and we did, and we liked some of the things that we saw, and we'll make decisions about how we divide the labor up a little later in the week.
You said Rodgers is questionable. Who do you call on if he's out? Is it Rudolph, Howard?
I didn't say he was questionable. I said you could describe him as questionable at this point in the week, and by that I mean his participation might be limited at the early portions of the week, and I really hadn't pondered not having them at this juncture.
Mike, there were a number of leaders who said players need to look in the mirror. Do you feel like you have a group of guys that will look in the mirror, that will take ownership?
I do, and because I think the basic premise that we start with in terms of assembling a group, and it's whether it's draft or free agency, is we like good men who happen to be good at football. And then secondarily, we like men who absolutely love football. And we believe that those two attributes really lend itself to the discussion that you asked about. The ability to assess, the ability to absorb, the ability to dig in when things get difficult, I think are a little bit easier when you got good people and we got people that love what it is they do.
Some of the younger guys on your roster that fall into that category.
Most of them.
Mike, with Robert Jones, and how do you feel like Andrews Pete played, and will he start again?
I thought he was solid, and he will.
What did you find out about?
I'm sorry?
Is Broderick's out for the year? Is that the
He's on IR, and so he's out for this week.
What did you find out about Broderick's injury? Because at this time last week, he was just a week-to-week thing.
It still can be characterized as week-to-week. I don't know that I have any definitive information on the extent or the length of the time out, and so I don't want to give you guys misinformation. When I get it, I'll give it to you. But certainly you can classify him as out because obviously he's on IR.
When the negativity presents itself in the stadium in the way that it did on Sunday, your players are not immune to it. As a coach, do you want them to lean into that a little bit, or do you try to or you want them to block it out?
I don't know that you have meetings regarding it. I don't think any of us prepare for failure. Sometimes you're faced with it and you deal with it, but I don't know that we strategically plan for negativity in the ways that you ask.
Anyone else? All right.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, that's Mike Tomlin's press conference. Welcome in, Missy Matthews. And, one of the things he said, there were a lot of things he said, but starting with a health perspective, he cleared up the Rodgers situation that I think had some people maybe thinking he was questionable. He's not officially questionable. He may be questionable about playing or practicing early in the week. But other than that, the big news to me is Harmon. They missed that guy on that defensive line, and I think it showed up last week.
Yeah, Coach Tomlin was asked about, that playoff loss in Baltimore and how they approached the offseason, and his answer to, trying to get after the AFC North people that they face all the time is to add bigs. And Derek Harmon was one of those bigs that they added, clearly with their first-round draft pick. Did not have him last week against the Bills. You saw what they were able to do. Don't love going to Baltimore without him as well, but unfortunately that is the case. He has officially been ruled out, and then Patrick Queen and James Pierre, who were hurt in game on Sunday against Buffalo. They're questionable. We'll start the week slow, see where they go. James Pierre's in the concussion protocol, so that kind of is its own thing. You can't really make a decision on that until you get the all clear.
Well, it's going to be a big test in the run game. We saw last week that the Bills had a scheme that the Steelers could not stop. However, earlier in the season, they certainly handled the NFL's leading rusher in Jonathan Taylor. They did the same to Josh Jacobs. They did the same to Chicago Bears. So which is it going to be? Hopefully those three we talked about will carry into this game against Baltimore. We'll talk about all of that and some of the other stuff that Mike Tomlin talked about when we come back. We'll take a break right now. It's the Tomlin Tuesday press conference right here at the UPMC Rooney Sports Complex.
Get all your Steelers gear direct from the team. Shop the Steelers Pro Shop in-store or online for all things black and gold. You can get jerseys, hats, authentic memorabilia, custom gear, and exclusives you can't find anywhere else. And of course, get the ultimate Steelers game day accessory, the Terrible Towel. Steelers Nation shops here. Get your gear in-store or online at shop.steelers.com.
Yeah, we just didn't have a lot of positive plays. I felt good enough to be out there. Just not ready to take a snap under center yet. Hopefully next week for that. I'm disappointed in my performance, disappointed in the offensive performance. And we got to flush this one. We're 6-6, and we had a game for the division lead this week.
Aaron, what lacked in the offensive performance? What caused what we saw tonight?
No, I got to look at the film, but it's just execution, obviously. But I got to look at the film.
In the third and 9, where you guys ran it to the right with Kenneth Gainwell, was that the called play, or was that something that you guys checked into at the line of scrimmage?
That was called play.
It just didn't cut on the nose, or was it broken? Or?
I hope it's not broken. But yeah, just had to stop the bleeding. It was bleeding all over the place.
As a quarterback, when you guys are down and you're in that down and distance, what did you see on that play to try to run the ball there instead of trying to attack downfield on the third and 9 where you guys ran?
Come on, man. Do you want to start talking philosophical? Is that what you want? It's 3rd and 9. They brought pressure off that side, so we checked. We had a run called that we checked the blocking. They did on the run, and we had a chance. We had a chance. If that thing hits, nobody says a goddamn thing. If we block on the front side, on the perimeter, I mean, literally everybody's blocked up, and we got to sustain those blocks on the outside. Kenny gets first down there, nobody says a damn thing.
Our fans are here. Give them something to cheer about to them. The crowd at Acrisure is so loud.
There's nothing like game day in Pittsburgh.
Oh my, TJ!
This defense is swarming.
And it's kicked off. Wow, what a catch! Guess who? Touchdown, Pittsburgh Steelers.
We'll see you at Acrisure Stadium. Here we go.
I never want people to apologize for caring. And I view the frustration displayed last week in that way. Guys were in fight mode, they care. The game wasn't unfolding the way that we desire. They didn't necessarily express it appropriately. And so as a leader, it's about redirecting that and making sure it's channeled in the right ways. But also, how do we move on from that? The source of that frustration is not playing the way that we would like to play. And so certainly putting together a good plan and putting them in position to play well is a component of moving on from it.
It's one of the challenges of any head coach, picking your team up when they're down and trying to send the right messages, and I think that's what Mike Tomlin will do this week. Last week, third quarter, once again, was a problem. The Steelers have had leads, Missy, at halftime multiple times, I think 4 times this year, and they've watched them dissipate in the third quarter specifically. What do you think, as someone who's down there on the field watching every single play, what's missing in those third quarters?
I mean, I wish I had the answer because I would certainly suggest it. But it's almost backwards of last year. Before, in 2024, it was they weren't scoring on the opening drive or, early in the first quarter, but the third quarter they'd come alive, and they've almost reversed that at this point. But it is certainly disheartening when you have a lead and then you let a team come back and score 20 plus unanswered points, and just really the way in which they did it. When the defense is on the field for that long, the time of possession, we talk about it every week, but just horrendous against the Buffalo Bills, and certainly not a recipe for success and a victory. But I agree there's, changes have to be made. Clearly there are frustrations, and I think it is a matter of the player. Do you flush it? Do you let it eat you? Do you let it motivate you? How does that work? Coach Tomlin said he wants all of those things to happen. But I also agree the same ingredients that got them 6 losses also got them 6 wins. So they have to find a way to play consistent and to play a full game and not just half of a game or a really good quarter.
And we saw last week that previous clip you saw where you highlighted the Bills' offensive line, a lot of flow to the left and then open up cutback lanes for James Cook.
Right.
And that's something that he does well. And it seemed like a lot of guys got sucked into that or were blocked and could not get to the outside fast enough.
Yeah, and they knew that. TJ Watt even even said after the game, you know that Four likes to bounce to the outside, and it was just one of those things where it just could not be stopped. They could not get it to work. Clearly, you were missing Derek Carmen. Not saying that is the reason why it went as poorly as it did, but still, it's more of like, you got to beat your man. You got to take your job, your gap, whatever, seriously, and everybody do their part in order to make it successful, because that obviously just did not work.
Yeah, and complementary football, you've often heard him talk about that, and really all season long it hasn't been that way. When you look at the snap counts, the defense has been on the field longer than any team, and the offense the least amount of times. That's got to change, and it starts with possessing the ball, I think, and then you win the time of possession game. So first down is very important. You got to get yourself in those third and manageables, and if they do that, I think they can have success, especially in a game like this week coming up. You expect it to be low scoring and more of a typical Steelers-Ravens game. For sure, and the Ravens are also dealing with their issues, but they made their way back from starting poorly to get to 6-6. So, they're a little bit reverse of where the Steelers are, but agree, it is usually always very low scoring. Turnovers, takeaways are always a big part of it, special teams, and you imagine that that's going to be the case. I think for the Steelers, taking care of the football is the number one priority this week, and something that they have kind of gotten away from the past few weeks, where the losses have been coming, it feels like, more frequently. The AFC is really a logjam. It's unbelievable how many teams are alive, and not really, with the exception of maybe New England, which won again last night to make it 11-2, and they have a bye week coming up, a good scheduling for them.
Yeah, that's a good bye.
But also, a team like Baltimore will have 10 days in advance of the Steelers game, just like the Buffalo Bills had. We'll talk about how impactful that may be for them, or how the Steelers kind of neutralize what the Ravens do, which is going to be a heavy dose of running. We'll talk about that when we continue right here on the Mike Tomlin Press Conference Show every Tuesday at noon right here on KDK Plus and Steelers digital platforms.
Fans are here. Give them something to cheer about to them. The crowd at Acrisure is so loud. Wow! There's nothing like game day in Pittsburgh. Oh my, TJ! This defense is swarming. It is kicked off. Wow! What a catch! Get two! Touchdown! Pittsburgh Steelers! We'll see you at Acrisure Stadium. Here we go.
Just coming out flat, not playing good enough football in all facets.
TJ, how do you explain the team coming out flat in this type of game?
Not making plays, not enough. I mean, playmaking is what sets things off, and when you're not making plays, it sucks, and we need to find ways to be able to make plays. And I mean, I've never seen a team run the same play as much as they ran it tonight and have as much success as they had. I mean, I'm out of words for it.
Also, with the defense, you guys provided several opportunities for the offense, giving them great field position, and they didn't even catch with a field goal. So when you get through time of possession, is it true? The defense hates to admit any weakness, but sometimes do you guys get tired after the time of possession favors the other team by such a large margin?
If we get a 3-and-out, we're off the field. So it's as simple as that. The attrition is on us for not getting off the field. There's nobody else to blame but ourselves. It's as simple as that.
The play that the Bills kept running on you guys. Is it something that you guys talked about going into this week, and what led to the lack of adjustments to counter it?
Absolutely. I mean, we knew that Four was a hell of a runner. I think number 1 or number 2 rushing offense in the National Football League. We knew that he liked to bounce outside, knew that he was an elite running back. Weren't able to stop it tonight.
Get all your Steelers gear direct from the team. Shop the Steelers Pro Shop in-store or online for all things black and gold. You can get jerseys, hats, authentic memorabilia, custom gear, and exclusives you can't find anywhere else. And of course, get the ultimate Steelers game day accessory, the Terrible Towel. Steelers Nation shops here. Get your gear in-store or online at shop.steelers.com.
I'm open to doing whatever it is that we need to do, obviously, in the effort to make practice better. Sometimes practice gets challenging, particularly at the early portions of the week this time of year, because of lack of significant player availability, and certainly felt that last week, not making that as an excuse. That's just the reality of our business. I'm sure people that we compete against miss significant players as well. How we navigate that oftentimes during the week is, an example of how we might navigate it during the course of the weekend. And certainly last week, based on the results, were not good enough. And particularly from a defensive perspective, when we lost Patrick Queen, we didn't do a good enough job of managing that component of it.
So we're not talking about the game, we're talking about practice. Practice. But it was a topic this week because Aaron Rodgers brought it out. And I understand what he's saying there, but I've talked to enough coaches to know that if you practice well the whole week, it normally has a carryover effect, and the reverse of that is true also.
Agree. Aaron did, kind of say as well that sometimes you can have a great week of practice and have a bad game, or a bad week of practice and a great game. But I do feel like at this point, everybody has to be on their P's and Q's. And whether it's the tempo of practice, the execution of practice, the extra film study that they're all seeming to do, it all needs to be taken up a notch, knowing that these next 5 games are going to determine if you're playing football in January or not. Right. And you're playing the Ravens twice in 5 games. So you know what's ahead of you. And still another game with Cleveland, Detroit. I mean, it's not like it's going to get any easier. So whatever they need to do to make everybody feel more confident and be on the same page, I am all for, whatever that takes.
It's like going to the practice range in golf, having a great day, go to the first team and you shank one. So I understand how that happens. And reverse of that too, you can hit them terribly, go to the first hole and you drill it. Baltimore, now this is they obviously know each other, but knowing what the Ravens just saw from the Bills and what they did to the Steelers in the run game, 249 yards, and they know last year was 299 in that wild card game. I would expect a heavy dose of Derrick Henry. He hasn't been at his best, but he's still a force, almost 1,000 yards so far this season.
Well, it was interesting. John Harbaugh was asked why wasn't Derrick Henry really used in the second quarter, or really the second half of that game that they lost on last Thursday against the Bengals. And it felt like that first game that we played the Ravens last season at home at Acrisure, I think it was week 11, they kind of got away from using him too, and that doesn't seem to be a recipe for them. So maybe less Derrick Henry, less snaps for Derrick Henry is a good thing for the Steelers, but regardless, as you said, when you watch this past game against the Bills, why would you not game plan to use Derrick Henry as much as possible to try to, take advantage of a Steelers weakness that keeps popping up? But then you also have to think, as you have pointed out already, the Colts game, there's games where it works so well. So hopefully it's something the Steelers can pull upon and figure out a game plan this week, knowing that you also have a mobile quarterback and he has won the last 2 that you faced him.
Yeah, Lamar Jackson, he's a guy they know well, and although he still, to me, looks a little hampered by his injury, we'll see how that manifests itself on Sunday. Take a break, come back with more of our Mike Tomlin press conference here on a Tuesday in Pittsburgh. Steelers and Ravens, 1 o'clock Sunday. You'll see it on KDK TV.
Get all your Steelers gear direct from the team. Shop the Steelers Pro Shop in-store or online for all things black and gold. You can get jerseys, hats, authentic memorabilia, custom gear, and exclusives you can't find anywhere else. And of course, get the ultimate Steelers game day accessory, the Terrible Towel. Steelers Nation shops here. Get your gear in-store or online at shop.steelers.com.
Kim, how do you put into words the frustration, the emotions that you feel individually and that this locker room feels at this point after another loss?
Individually, I'm just concerned about this team. 2 big losses back to back. But there's, we have a big game next week, but right now I'm kind of pissed off with how we played. And I'm saying it lightly, but I hope everybody in this locker room is too.
Kim, it seems like we're talking about the same thing week after week. Execution, get back, watch the film. How do you fix those things this late in the season that hasn't been fixed already?
Accountability, ownership in what you do. We got to be in all three phases. And if you can't say, I was wrong on this play and I need to be in this gap and do your 1/11th, it kind of sets our team back. Not pointing anybody out, but myself included, we all have to be responsible for what we do on that field.
Do you feel like that's an issue or has been an ongoing issue this season?
Just inconsistent.
Our fans are here. Give them something to cheer about to them. The crowd at Acrisure is so loud.
There's nothing like game day in Pittsburgh.
Oh my, TJ!
This defense is swarming.
And it's picked off. Wow, what a catch. Get two. Touchdown, Pittsburgh Steelers.
We'll see you at Acrisure Stadium. Here we go.
In general, I agree with them. From this perspective, football is our game. We're in the sport entertainment business. And so if you root for the Steelers, entertaining them is winning. And so when you're not winning, it's not entertaining. And if you've been in this business, you understand that. And so I respect it. I share frustrations. I understand what makes this thing go, and winning is what makes this thing go.
That's one way to solve everything, too. Acrisure is always loud. They were loud in a negative way this week because they did not like the performance, and I think it's one of those things that's, dates back maybe to some of the playoff performances that have happened also. But we heard it in Baltimore, too, after their game with the Bengals. So it's just the NFL right now. If you don't give the fans what they want, they're going to let you know, and they have a right to do it. But you change it by winning, and if they get to 7-6, they're going to be in the division lead here heading into Week 15.
Yeah, winning cures all, and totally agree. It just feels like especially the home games have not been up to par as of lately, where it really felt like in the past playing at home meant something and usually helped the Steelers get those wins. So hopefully it's something that if you can get a big win in Baltimore, which obviously is not an easy feat, come home and have a primetime game, Hall of Honor weekend, and get some momentum and, keep trucking along because the road is narrower and the playoffs are in sight, but it's all a matter of what you do with these last 5 games that you have the opportunity at.
And of the last 5, you have these head-to-head meetings, and Mike Tomlin talked early in his press conference about liking this sort of schedule. There are those out there who think maybe you should spread them out more, hit a team at the beginning of the season. The NFL has said, nope, we're going to keep these division matchups in there all throughout the NFL heading into the second in December football.
Well, I liked at least this season we weren't waiting until week 11 to play our first AFC North matchup
that
and
was
having
a little bit too
all
much.
6 of them, in the back end. But you always know that the Baltimore ones are going to be closer till the end. That's usually how they like to do it, and they picked right. These games always mean something. The Steelers had a chance last year when they went to Baltimore in the regular season to win that game and to clinch the North. They weren't able to do that, and we saw what happened.
All right, we'll take a break, come back and wrap up this show. Tomlin Tuesdays in the books. We'll highlight some of the things you may have missed if you just turned in, including the injury situation. That's next.
Our fans are here. Give them something to cheer about to them. The crowd at Acrisure is so loud.
There's nothing like game day in Pittsburgh.
Oh my, TJ!
This defense is swarming.
And it's picked off. Wow, what a catch. Get two. Touchdown, Pittsburgh Steelers.
We'll see you at Acrisure Stadium. Here we go.
I mean, we have this conversation like every other week, so yeah, it's frustrating, but I mean, you got to put your head down and keep working.
When you look at the losses, the 4 losses, they're blowing second half leads. Can you put your finger on what happened?
I mean, not today. I haven't got in and watched the film, so no, I can't point at anything directly. There's just some things that we have to continue to work on defense, continue to hustle, continue to execute.
How much does it weigh on you guys as a locker room, as a team, to have to keep having these conversations with us and in these post games where there is just this mounting frustration?
You just can't let it. You have to. I mean, we have big games coming up, and we have to be focused on that. Obviously, we'll learn from this, and I mean, yeah, it's heavy on the heart, but you got to move on, and you have to be prepared for the next opponent.
And they can do a lot of different things with their run game, obviously, as good as Cook is, as well as Allen can run the ball. Was there anything that they got you with that you weren't expecting coming into this?
No, the coaches did a great job of preparing us. Some of the big runs that hit on us, we went over it a bunch of times this week. We just have to continue to execute.
And they booed Renegade. There were fire Tomlin chants. What's going through your mind as a player when fans are doing that at games?
More focused with on the field stuff. I mean, that really has nothing to do with me. I'm just focused with on the field and how we can try to execute every single play.
You mentioned being well prepared for what they were going to do in the run game, but what wasn't clicking out there that allowed them to be so successful in that area?
Like I said, I'll just have to go watch the film. I mean, obviously, certain plays or certain things, but I can't sit here and tell you exactly. I have to go watch the film, and if you ask me that tomorrow, I could probably be able to tell you that.
Get all your Steelers gear direct from the team. Shop the Steelers Pro Shop in-store or online for all things black and gold. You can get jerseys, hats, authentic memorabilia, custom gear, and exclusives you can't find anywhere else. And of course, get the ultimate Steelers game day accessory, the Terrible Towel. Steelers Nation shops here. Get your gear in-store or online at shop.steelers.com.
All right, welcome back. One of the interesting quirks about any scheduling, you're going to have pluses and minuses. It's interesting that last week Buffalo played on Thursday, had 10 days off in preparation of the Steelers. This week, it's the same thing with Baltimore. They played on Thanksgiving night, and there's a third coming up, isn't there?
Well, yeah, the Lions are playing this Thursday, and then the Steelers will eventually see them. They have Miami in between, but still crazy when you think about it. It is what it is, though. You can't really change your schedule once you get it. For the Steelers, didn't love that early Week 5 bye. When the schedule first came out, seemed like they needed it due to some injuries, but now I still kind of wish it was early or later this season.
Yeah. Always better later. At least that's the way we see it. All right, that's going to wrap it up for us. Thank you for joining us. We'll do it again next Tuesday ahead of a Monday night football game against the Dolphins. Have a great weekend, everyone.